Every civilization claims it values individuality. Yet the moment someone thinks beyond accepted boundaries, the same civilization becomes a courtroom. The accusation rarely begins with violence. It begins with rejection. Most people believe rejection is simply an emotional wound. Marquis de Sade forces us to consider something far more disturbing. What if rejection is one of society's oldest instruments of order? Not because every social rule is false, but because every community must decide where freedom ends and conformity begins. The outcast stands exactly on that invisible border. History remembers philosophers, artists, scientists, and political dissidents who were mocked before they were admired. It also remembers dangerous figures whose ideas deserved criticism. The uncomfortable truth is that society often cannot distinguish between the two until much later. That uncertainty creates fear. Fear demands certainty. Certainty creates labels. Once someone receives a label, people stop examining ideas and begin judging identities. Social media did not invent this instinct. It merely accelerated it. A single mistake becomes a permanent identity. A single unpopular opinion becomes a reason for exclusion. The crowd rarely asks whether the person is right. It asks whether remaining associated with that person is safe. De Sade explored this tension from one of history's most controversial positions. His writings challenged accepted morality so radically that his name became synonymous with excess. Whether one agrees with him or rejects him, his life exposes a timeless question. Why does society fear certain ideas more than certain actions? Perhaps because actions end, ideas spread. That possibility has frightened every civilization since the first laws were written. The greatest prison may not be walls or chains. It may be the silent fear of becoming the next person everyone refuses to understand. And once you recognize that possibility, an even darker question appears. If rejection shapes obedience, who truly decides what freedom means? Number 1. The invisible courtroom. Long before any judge speaks, society delivers its first verdict through ordinary conversations. Reputation becomes evidence before facts ever arrive. A promotion disappears without explanation. Friends stop returning messages. Invitations quietly vanish. Modern exclusion rarely announces itself. It simply rearranges the room until one chair remains empty. This pattern appears inside corporations, universities, political movements, and online communities. The mechanism changes very little because human psychology changes very little. We instinctively search for belonging because isolation once threatened survival. De Sade examined how institutions define acceptable behavior, not merely through laws, but through moral expectations that become almost invisible. The surprising truth is that people often obey unwritten rules more faithfully than written ones. A company handbook may allow disagreement, yet employees remain silent because they fear social consequences more than formal punishment. A public figure may lose influence not after breaking a law, but after violating an unwritten expectation shared by millions of strangers. The paradox is striking. The louder a society celebrates independent thinking, the more subtle its pressure toward conformity can become. This does not prove that every rejected individual is a misunderstood genius. Many deserve criticism. The deeper lesson is that rejection itself reveals how communities preserve stability. Every civilization draws boundaries. The real philosophical question is whether those boundaries protect justice, protect comfort, or simply protect familiarity. Once that question appears, another mystery follows. If fear of exclusion shapes behavior, what happens to the person who stops fearing exclusion altogether? Number 2. Freedom begins where approval ends. Most people imagine freedom as unlimited choice. De Sade presents a far less comforting possibility. Freedom begins only after approval loses its authority over your identity. That idea does not celebrate recklessness. It exposes dependence. Consider today's digital world. A creator posts an opinion. Within minutes, numbers begin measuring acceptance. Likes become emotional currency. Silence feels like failure. Criticism feels like exile. Technology changed the speed of judgment, but not its psychological foundation. Human beings have always searched for confirmation that they belong. The unexpected consequence is that many decisions no longer emerge from conviction. They emerge from prediction. People ask which opinion will be rewarded, instead of which opinion they actually hold. This habit slowly divides the public self from the private self. One becomes performative, the other remains hidden. Philosophically, this tension reaches far beyond social media. Throughout history, intellectual movements often advanced because someone accepted temporary rejection rather than permanent self-betrayal. The cost was rarely comfort. The reward was authenticity. De Sade's controversial legacy reminds us that challenging accepted morality carries consequences that cannot be ignored. Some challenges reveal hypocrisy. Others reveal danger. Society must constantly distinguish between them, and it rarely succeeds perfectly. That uncertainty explains why approval becomes such a powerful force. It promises certainty in a world that has very little of it. Yet certainty has a price. Every unquestioned consensus leaves one question unasked, and that unanswered question leads directly toward an even deeper conflict. Number 3. The mask everyone wears. Perhaps the greatest paradox is not that people hide their desires, it is that they hide their doubts. Certainty earns admiration. Hesitation invites suspicion. Across boardrooms, election campaigns, and personal relationships, confidence often appears more persuasive than careful reflection. This illusion shapes modern life. Leaders feel pressure to appear unshakable. Professionals avoid admitting uncertainty. Ordinary people edit their personalities until they resemble the expectations surrounding them. The result is a society filled with convincing performances and, surprisingly, few honest conversations. De Sade explored the tension between inner impulses and external morality through provocative literature that still divides scholars today. Regardless of whether one accepts or rejects his conclusions, his work forces readers to confront an uncomfortable reality. Human beings are rarely as transparent as they appear. Every social order depends partly upon performance. Manners, rituals, traditions, and public identities allow millions of strangers to coexist peacefully. Yet the same performances can also conceal fear, resentment, and loneliness. The modern workplace illustrates this contradiction perfectly. Meetings overflow with agreement, while private conversations reveal profound disagreement. Public harmony often disguises private conflict. The shocking discovery is not that masks exist. It is that people eventually mistake the mask for the person beneath it. The longer that confusion continues, the more difficult genuine freedom becomes. And once identity itself becomes a performance, the next question is impossible to avoid. If the world applauds only the version of you that conforms, who remains when the applause finally disappears? Number 4. The price of becoming acceptable. Acceptance is often mistaken for peace. In reality, it is frequently a negotiation. Every social group asks for something before it offers belonging. Sometimes the price is harmless. It asks for patience, respect, or cooperation. Sometimes the price is invisible. It asks you to silence a question that makes others uncomfortable. History shows that every era defines respectability differently. Ideas once considered dangerous later become ordinary. Others once praised become impossible to defend. The standard moves, but the desire to fit within it remains remarkably constant. This is why public approval is such unstable ground on which to build an identity. A company may celebrate innovation until innovation threatens established interests. A political movement may praise independent voices until those voices criticize the movement itself. Even close friendships can become fragile when honesty interrupts shared certainty. De Sade understood that morality is never discussed in a vacuum. It is shaped by institutions, traditions, and power structures that evolve over time. His conclusions remain controversial, but his questions continue to disturb. Who defines what is acceptable? Who benefits when certain conversations become impossible? These questions should not encourage rebellion for its own sake. They encourage intellectual vigilance. The paradox is that societies need shared rules to survive, yet those same rules can become resistant to necessary change. The wisest observers learn to separate social approval from objective truth. They recognize that popularity measures agreement, not accuracy. And once popularity loses its authority, another illusion begins to crack.